Hugh, it's Ryan. I'm freaking out right now, Hugh. I've just had the best idea for a TV show. Oh my God, it's for you and me, right? So, quick elevator pitch. So, you and I, we play ourselves, but at night time, we turn into a crime-fighting duo, right? Okay. So, my character is Ryan the Mastermind Shelton, and your character, instead of Hugh van Cuylenburg, is Hugh Van Barking Dog, a trusty brown Labrador. A dog. You're a dog, but you voice it. You do your voice. And we just solve crimes together. I mean, it can't not work. The only issue we've got at this point is figuring out somewhere to pitch it. I don't know where we could possibly find an in at a network. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you're at Channel 9 today talking to Georgie Gardner on the Today Show. I mean, you have the perfect opportunity. You've got to pitch it to Georgie. Okay, great. Pitch it to Georgie. I've sent you a PDF in your email. Pitch it to Georgie. She'll pitch it up to the big wigs at Channel 9, and this can't lose. Hugh, we've basically got a TV show. Give me a call back. We've got to celebrate. Or just let me know how the pitch goes. I'm sorry, I'm just blabbing. I'm just really excited. Okay, Hugh, speak soon. It's Ryan.
To call back, press 2 to
We're all imperfect. And on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh van Cuylenburg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum. And this is The Imperfects.
Hello, Ryan.
Hey, Hugh.
How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, really good. How you been?
Good, thanks. Nice shorts.
Thanks. They're old. You've actually walked in today with some of the shortest shorts. I mean, I don't even know if you'd call them shorts. I respect and to a certain extent envy your athletic ability, and I mean, while I'm talking about it, your athletic figure. I mean, I think you obviously work out a lot.
No, I don't do that.
But you've walked into the studio today with running shorts on, and I honestly still don't really know where to look. Especially as you sit down, I feel like it's getting to the point where you need to say to me, my eyes are up here. I think that would be a worthy phrase.
They are very short. I apologise.
No need to apologise. You do what you got to do. And you've gone for a run, and I think part of my bringing it up is the fact that I haven't gone for a run today, and maybe I feel like I should have. This is a deeper chat that we need to have later, or I need to have with myself.
I do need to apologise because it's a bit much. But anyway.
Well, today's an exciting day because Georgie Gardner is the guest on the podcast today. Georgie, I mean, I feel like Georgie I would put up as icon. She's almost becoming like Australian television icon. Would you put her in that category?
I would, absolutely.
I think she's there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty biased because she's always been an amazing support for me. Quite a few years ago, I think someone cancelled last minute that was meant to be a guest on the Today Show, and they were a bit desperate, so they called me, and I was sitting on the desk with Georgie and Carl, and I can't remember who else was there, but
this was in the Carl days.
Yeah, and I'd never done TV before, and I have to say, enormous respect for you for doing it because I find it so hard. But I sat there. I didn't know I'd find it hard, but I sat there and I knew what they were going to ask me. I'd speak about this stuff every single day of my life, and they asked me the questions. Now, when I was in grade 3, I went through a year at school where I had a stutter. I don't think anyone knew it because...
You had a stutter?
Yeah. When I went to say words that started with I or sentences that started with I couldn't say them, or S as well. I don't know what it was. But no one knew because I just chose not to speak. If I started to struggle, I'd just go completely quiet and not talk.
Interesting.
Did you know I had a stutter, Josh?
No idea.
No, okay, there you go. So even my family didn't know because it went away grade 3, grade 4, didn't think about it again.
Whoa.
And I'm sitting there on the Today Show and they asked me my first question and my answer started with an I and I couldn't get it out and I just froze. And I had this stutter and I stuttered my way through. I've actually searched it to make sure there's no videos of it because it was appalling. It was awful. And I saw the panic in both Georgie.
You can still get it on the dark web.
Still faithful.
Oh, yeah. It's all over the dark web. It's huge on the dark web, actually. Yeah.
And I could see the panic on Georgie and Carl's face going, this guy's frozen. And
What have we done?
Yeah, who is this guy we found?
Yeah.
And it was a terrible interview, and it went very quick. And I remember that they just wrapped it up because I couldn't get my words out.
Yeah.
And I was walking off the set or the studio just going, what just happened? And Georgie came over and sort of found me just before I left and said, oh, I'd love to hear your story sometime. If you get the chance, if you're in Sydney, please let me know. I'd love to hear your story. I don't know how you managed to work that out from what I just said, but thank you. And she said, here's my number. And I was like, this can't be, surely she's just being nice because she feels sorry for me. But I got in touch and we caught up about a month later and I talked to her about the Resilience Project. She got really emotional. She said, you need to come back on and tell that story. A couple of months later, they had another opportunity. They got me back on with another psych, and the psych was really good, and the psych did most of the talking. I didn't speak much. I was just bad again. I just found myself stuttering again all the way through the interview, and I was like, maybe I just can't do television. And then Georgie said, we'll get you back. We'll try again. And I don't know why she kept persisting, but then she got me back and she said to me, she sat me on the couch, and it was like this part called The Agenda. And she said, you've got heaps of time. We're not on for another 3 or 4 minutes, so just relax. And then she said, by the way, talk to me like you spoke to me when we were having a coffee. It's just you and me. We're having a coffee.
Yeah.
Tell me a story. And if you do it the way you did when we had coffee, I'll give you the same reaction. I guarantee it. Oh, and she said, oh, and by the way, we're on now. And then then the cameras were on, and I thought I had another 3 minutes. And then she started asking questions, and it was an amazing interview. She actually cried during the interview, and it went.
That is amazing.
It went really viral, and afterwards she gave me a massive hug, and she said, "I'm so proud of you for doing that." From that point on, the Resilience Project went to a whole new level of people knowing who we were, which was amazing purely because we got to reach more people with our message, which is really nice. So
it is, I mean, it's amazing. It's very kind of her to kind of keep giving. She obviously believed in you enough to just keep giving you a chance, and she knew you could do it. Yeah,
it was incredible. I don't know what she saw, but she, so I've always been extremely, and she always says every time you're in Sydney, let us know, we'll have you on the show. And so she's been incredible for me. So and even in making herself available to do this interview, her alarm goes off at, what did she say, 3:30 or something? 3:30, starts the show at 5:30, then she hangs around for an hour after the show to do the interview with us. So very, very nice of her.
Yeah. Before we hear from Georgie and yourself, there is one thing I just want to bring up because, and we've just spoken about this, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
At the start of because before what you hear when you're listening on the podcast is you hear the kind of like it's slightly edited. So we take out a few of the, when we say Josh takes out all the, like a couple of the ums and ahs and a few bits that are not necessary.
Yeah.
And so because he started recording essentially when you guys sat down or walked in, there's a bit of like off mic chat that happens at the start. And Josh sent me that to listen to the whole interview first. So I heard that. And there is that bit at the start where Georgie talks about one time where she had done another podcast in the past. And look, I think I'd just like to play the audio first. We will come back in a sec. But I just want to play this bit of audio, trying to remember whose podcast she was on. And you, Hugh, referenced the radio show that this person was on. Let's listen to it first.
I've done really quite, what's the word?
Candid?
Very candid interviews in years gone by.
Yeah.
Remember I did one actually in this very room with those girls from Melbourne. Monty. Do you know her? She's on radio in Melbourne.
Oh, yes, I do. Yes, yeah.
Monty and
Whipper, or it was...
Well, she's in some radio, anyway.
So some radio thing. So first of all, Monty, very good friend of mine, Katie Diamond, Monty, and she currently has a podcast, Show and Tell. Her website's called Show and Tell. Anyway, back in the day, you were trying to remember, what was that radio show that she was on, Monty and Whipper? Well, to refresh your memory, it was Ryan, Monty and Whipper with your co-host of this podcast, Ryan Shelton from Rove. Remember that guy? Remember that guy, Ryan Shelton from Rove? Whatever happened to him? Oh, yeah, he did nothing for ages and then he started a podcast with some guy from the Resilience Project. Anyway,
really embarrassed about that.
It's fine. It's fine. It's not like I'm holding on to it or anything. It's not like it's something that I'm deeply insecure about.
Was there ever a point where it was just Monty and Whipper? Or was it?
If anything, it was first Ryan and Monty.
Right.
And then Whipper jumped on board. Whipper now does some small breakfast radio show in Sydney with Fitzy. And but I just wanted to point that out that this is a small little Australian radio history lesson that, yes, while Hamish and Andy were on, there was another show called Ryan, Monty and Whipper. And that was me. All good. It was just 2 years. It was just National Drive on
I was
Nova.
picturing you listening
no big
to the-
deal. I don't care. I don't care about it. It's fine.
Just picturing you listening to this audio going, Ryan, right, it was me.
It was Ryan Shelton from Rove.
Well, I'm sorry. I also, you would have noticed from that grab also my voice. I was really sick. I'd just done the Today Show in the morning, and I'd lost my voice a couple of days before, so I was pretty crook. And so I just got through the interview with her, and then, my voice is shocking throughout this interview. So, you'll have to put up with that, everyone listening.
Well, it's a great chat, and it is fascinating to hear kind of, someone that you see every morning on the Today Show, doing so many different things. She's clearly so busy. She's got like a lot of stuff about family in this chat, and it covers so many topics. So it is really interesting, just fascinating to hear that kind of other side of it.
Yeah, I found it really fascinating knowing the kind of person that she is, the way that the childhood trauma of her parents' separation has kind of shaped the person that she is now. And I think the way that she deals with scrutiny, all that kind of stuff that she cops now, I think has been shaped by the experiences she had as a kid, which is the same as all of us. We all go through things throughout our lives that shape who we are. But I found it really fascinating to learn that about Georgie in this interview. So, I hope everyone enjoys it, and we'll be back afterwards to pull out the best bits to discuss.
Yeah, Josh can edit that into something.
Okay, good. I really hope so. Georgie Gardner, thank you so much for joining us on our podcast. We're actually here in the green room at Channel 9. You've been very kind to have me on your show quite a few times now, and now you're on our show. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Hugh.
This podcast, we've just sort of had a bit of a chat about it a few minutes ago, but what we're trying to do. I suppose for me, I'd love to start by chatting about your family. We see so much of you on the TV and we read so much about you, but I'm interested to know, as a sort of a new parent myself at the moment, I'm interested to know what it's been like for you having kids. How's that changed your life? Now, your kids are a bit older now. How old are your kids?
Bronte's 14 and Gus is 12, and I've still very much got my learner plates on.
Right. Okay.
It's a work in progress.
So this feeling I have now is going to be going for another 14 years, you're saying, basically?
Just keep those trainer wheels strapped on,
right,
is all I can say.
Okay.
Because it's a marathon, Hugh. It's
Yep.
definitely not a sprint.
Yep.
I mean, at the stage you're at, probably every week you're learning something new. It's a hairy ride, but it's a ride that I relish. I don't know that I'm terribly good at this mothering thing, but one thing is for sure, I do adore my kids and would do anything for them.
Yeah.
The love I have for them is greater than anything. It's immeasurable. We used to have this little saying when I'd put them to bed, that beautiful book, Guess How Much I Love You, which I actually used to read back in the day when I was pregnant with number one, when I had so much time on my hands. And I'd lie in bed having an afternoon sleep and rub my belly and read this book, Guess How Much I Love You. And I'd read something somewhere that if you read to your children when they're still in the womb, they go on to be voracious readers.
And has it worked?
Well, she did for quite a long time. She's not doing quite as much as I'd like now because she's addicted to a screen.
Yep.
However, she is a great communicator and she knows she's loved.
Yep.
So maybe something rubbed off in there, I don't know. But we used to have this saying when I'd tuck them into bed, I love you to the moon and back. And then they'd say, and then back again and back. And it would go on. I love you back to the moon and back to, it would go on and on. And then that wore out a bit. And then it just became, I love you more. I love you more. No, I love you more. Okay, I love you most. And then it would be, I think we're done on that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You actually said to me, I think it was before I had Benji, I think you said having kids, what it did for you, and I've never forgotten this, having kids, you actually saw the world in colour for the first time. I think you said it was like before you had kids.
The world goes from black and white to colour.
Yeah. And at the time I thought, what a nice saying that is. but now having experienced it, I know exactly what you mean. Is it still kind of like that now when they're in their teenage years or approaching teen years?
Yeah, it's Technicolor.
Yeah.
High vis. Oh, look, well, that was certainly my experience because how can you put it into words? It's the most joyous, terrifying, extraordinary thing that you could ever do.
So as you know, Benji, my son, is 2.5 years old, and this is just, I find myself asking all parents this at the moment. We just desperately need advice. When 5 o'clock comes around in the afternoon, we're exhausted.
Oh, the witching hour.
Yeah, and so that's when you're most exhausted, 5 o'clock, and then you're up for the toughest 2-3 hours of the whole day. It is. Benji doesn't like eating at the moment. He throws his food everywhere. He doesn't like having a bath. And he's very hard to get to sleep. It is absolute mayhem. What did you do when your kid?
See, you're clearly too nice.
Well,
Don't you strap him into the high chair?
We can't get him in. He has this straight leg thing, and we can't get him in.
God, that's such a fractious time of day, isn't it? I remember when mine were that sort of age, I was doing the 3 a.m. starts, 3:30 starts. I'd do an all-nighter sometimes if they didn't sleep and just go straight to work.
Oh my gosh!
You can imagine how delirious I was.
That is very impressive.
Look.
Any tricks you've got?
Well, alcohol. Do you know, it's funny though, jokes aside, I used to, at that hour, because I would be cross-eyed and mine are very close in age. So when I sort of had a 2.5?
Yeah.
When I had a 2.5-year-old, I also had a 1-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember I used to be so just exhausted and I would be making their dinner, trying to listen to the news, trying to be across briefs for the next day. And I used to just think, you know what? I need alcohol. But I used to feel really guilty about it to the point where I couldn't quite bring myself. I mean, it started off just taking the lid off the bottle and that the sound of unscrewing the lid used to just take a layer of stress off and I used to just breathe, and then I built it up, you see. So first it was just taking the lid off. Then it was just pouring just a splash.
Yeah.
And then it became sort of like a half a glass and then it became a full glass. But for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to pour the wine into a wine glass because that would be absolutely giving
officially
in.
Drinking.
It would be officially an alcoholic, Hugh. If I poured that wine into a wine glass, that was just, and what a terrible look for a mother of 2 little children, supposedly a respectable journalist. I mean, what if a disaster struck and I had to race them to hospital and I was pissed? I mean, that's just, so I used to put it down to delirium, but I used to pour the wine into an old, a Vegemite glass. And you know how you keep your Vegemite glasses, you wash them and then you just reuse them. Well, I used to do it pour the wine into a Vegemite glass, somehow thinking that was just acceptable. That doesn't count. And also so that if Tim came home, I could hide it behind the toaster and I wouldn't be able to see it. I mean, how stupid. Seriously.
No, I think Penny will like that advice.
Tell Penny, have the glass of wine.
Well, in a Vegemite or a peanut butter
in a
container.
Vegemite glass, yeah. Or a mustard jar. Sometimes those mustard jars,
make good vessels for.
Yeah, they make very good vessels, and no one's the wiser.
I am so happy with that advice. Thank you. That is the best advice I've had in a very long time. Drink red wine out of a Vegemite container.
Can I just tell you, I now drink my wine very loudly and proudly out of a big wine glass.
Well, you deserve it, Georgie. I'm interested to know a lot more about how hard it is to be you when your job is so public and it's so heavily scrutinised?
Yeah, well, the scrutiny is pretty intense and it's definitely the aspect of it that I loathe more than anything, even more than the alarm clock.
What time's the alarm clock go off?
3:30.
Oh, God.
Yeah, if I start speaking Swahili in a minute, you'll know we can put it down to that.
Yeah, that's exactly
and it is a Friday. But look, the reality is it comes with the territory. So I get that. I knew what I was signing up for. But that intensity of analysis and scrutiny and nastiness has amped up exponentially. I mean, I was on the Today Show for 7 years, from about 2007. And then I actually walked away because I had had enough. I wanted to focus on my kids and just take a step back. Last thing I expected was to get a knock on the door to say, could you come back and be the host? And I gave it a lot of consideration, because going from being the newsreader to the host is quite a step up. But I decided at the age of 47, which is what I was at the time, I'm only going to get asked to do this once. I didn't want to die wondering. I had probably a better understanding than anyone as to what it involved. So I grabbed it with both hands and took it on. What I had underestimated was the amount of scrutiny. The whole paparazzi thing was a whole new thing. I mean, I'd been papped occasionally before that, but I had no idea it would be that intense.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of, the last thing I want is to sound woe is me. I mean, how, there are people dealing with far bigger, more stressful issues, but it is intense. And despite putting my mug on television every day, I actually don't really like talking about myself.
Yeah.
I like talking to other people about them.
Yeah.
I like asking the questions.
Yeah.
I'm not the story. So I'm always a bit confused as to why there is so much interest. But of course, it's not really interest. It's just that these publications, and I don't even want to dignify them with a name, they need fodder.
Yep.
So they need a narrative to fulfill what they do. And so, it's just a case of, right, get an uncompromising photo of Georgie Gardner. In fact, ideally, have her looking really angry, so that then we can run the story that the Today Show's not rating and Georgie's really pissed off about it. I mean, that's the bottom line.
So you have to walk around smiling everywhere.
I do.
Walk around looking like someone who's got a high rating show.
Exactly. But do you know what I mean? I mean, that's what it's about. It's
Yeah.
not that I'm any more interesting or important than anyone else. So it's a big irritation. Tell you what, though, I do relish the challenge to burn off at the traffic lights and lose them. I'm really good at that. And I've gone round roundabouts quite a few times and watched them sweat and taken off,
So
slowed
you're getting
down.
followed in your car? Is that
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. But so that's an annoyance. And, of course, then things get misconstrued and things get written that are out of context. And but I sort of hope we're getting to a stage where people don't give those publications a whole lot of credence,
I
because
saw.
they're 99% of the time absolute rubbish. I mean, let's just put this in perspective. It's a privilege.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, I hate getting up at 3:30 in the morning. I'm not going to lie, but, I don't muck around. I don't procrastinate. I jump up. I jump through the shower. I get to work and, it's very fast-paced. I'm someone who actually loves to hit the ground running. I don't really like waiting around for something to happen. So I dive right in. It's a big team effort. It's not just me. There's a cast of, not thousands, but there are plenty of people behind the scenes who are putting in enormous work to get everything to air. It's a team effort. It's collaborative. And, it's never lost on me. It's not forever. This is just one small chapter. How lucky. Why wouldn't you grab it with both hands and just maximise it?
Yeah.
I'm well paid, Hugh. I'm well looked after. It is, there are people out there doing extraordinary, far more important and meaningful and critical work than me, who don't get all the privileges and bells and whistles that come with it. So I am not complaining.
It's a very nice attitude.
Well, it's the only way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's accurate.
How do you deal with? I think about a few workplaces I've been involved in before, and there can be issues within the workplace or personalities who clash or whatever, but it's not on television. So if you have any issues with anyone you work with, or there's any personality clashes or whatever, is it hard to then put up? I've been in workplaces before. You put up a front that everything's fine. That might be back when I was a teacher, there might be an issue with one of the people I team teach with, and in front of the kids can't know. So that's in front of 30 kids, they can't know that teachers are not getting on too well. If it happens in a workplace like yours, is that really hard in front of, you're on television and you've got to make it look like everything's totally fine, no matter what the media is saying, no matter what is unravelling around you. Is that a very hard thing to do?
Well, potentially it would be, but I haven't really experienced it.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest frustrations of the year, last year, when I was hosting alongside Carl, because there'd be all this stuff written that couldn't have been further from the truth. He and I have a genuine love and respect for each other. I saw him just on Sunday up on the Gold Coast for the Logies, and, you know, we just really enjoy each other's company. And yes, he could be a pain in the ass, but equally so could I. And, you know, occasionally that might have bled through to our demeanour on air, but it's almost like that brother-sister thing where, yes, you annoy each other and you say something that you might regret and you might overreach sometimes. And I remember a couple of times giving him a bit of a, a bit of a slap down and thinking afterwards, oh, that might have been a bit too much, or, oh dear, that's going to be misconstrued. But what you saw was, I mean, the narrative on that was so inaccurate it wasn't funny. But what do you do? I mean, he and I and everyone, there's not a single person who we weren't working with on the floor or behind the scenes in the office who could tell you that we didn't like each other.
Yeah.
We liked and like each other enormously.
Yeah.
And that's just frustrating more than anything. And of course, the more you deny it and say, no, it's not true, we do like each other, it looks like that you're trying to, you know, state something that isn't right.
Yeah. Because I remember a couple of times we caught up and I'd read something that Georgie and Carl fall out over something, and I'd say, oh, how's everything going with Carl? And you'd say, fine, how come? What are you talking about? And it was kind of like this. Because
I don't read those trashy magazines.
Yeah, well, that's probably why you hadn't read it. I obviously do. But even with, like, if you know, the everyday person has an issue with someone in the workplace, they can kind of work through it. But to be splashed everywhere must be really challenging, especially.
It's just.
Was it ever awkward between you and Carl? When you turn up to work in the morning and someone's written something, do you say, "Hey, did you see what they wrote about us this time"?
Oh, he was awkward after Ubergate.
Oh, yeah, yep, I can understand why.
And you know, we had a good robust discussion about that. And as I said to him, I just said, "Look, I don't really care about your drunken drivel in the back of an Uber. What I care about is that you didn't come and tell me."
Yeah.
Because we have such an open relationship. And we said from the beginning, if there are ever any issues, let's talk about it directly. And you know me, what you see is what you get. Yeah. So that bugged me. Why don't you come and tell me? Don't tell your drunk brother in the back of an Uber over the phone, on speakerphone, you stupid idiot. But, you know, I said, I've probably said very disparaging things about you in the back of an Uber. I'm just not stupid enough to have the phone on speakerphone.
It's kind of a very healthy way to be, I think. As a teenager or some of the early 20s, what were the things that you were, I suppose, unsure about with yourself, or what were you lacking confidence in yourself? Because I find that extraordinary to hear that someone who's as confident enough to be able to do something like host a Today Show, to think of you in your teens or your 20s as not being that confident or insecure or whatever it is. What were the things that you found really hard back then?
Well, my home life had been a bit turbulent, just with divorced parents and feeling a little bit confused by all of that. So growing up was at times tumultuous. And
how old are you when your parents?
5.
5, okay.
Yeah. And they both remarried and both had more children.
Oh, right.
So there were times where I felt quite confused and let down by that. Not that it was probably much different to any child of divorced parents, but, you know, my parents had a genuine dislike for each other. So I remember at a very young age feeling almost responsible for that and wanting to patch things up and right the wrongs and get things back on track. And I think I felt a sense of sadness that I wasn't able to do that. And I was a really plain, chubby kid who wasn't terribly academic, who certainly didn't shoot the lights out on the sporting field. I was very average on all fronts. Loved to, where possible, be the class clown and get people laughing.
Yep.
But was very easily distracted. And I think often felt like I didn't really know where I fitted in. I didn't excel in anything. But what I did do was forge great friendships, and I think I had a very strong, despite all of that, and I know this sounds probably contradictory, but I think I had a very strong sense somehow of who I was. And I always had a great interest in communicating and talking to people and listening. And so it was, I guess, in a way, these competing things. I was really self-conscious of my looks. You know, I mean, I remember going down to the beach with all my friends growing up in Perth, and I was the girl who never never stripped down to a bather's.
Right.
And everyone else would dive in, and, be 45 degrees in Perth. And I'm sitting there still in my... Yeah, exactly, because I just was so self-conscious of being the chubby girl.
Yeah.
And I've got over that now, thank God.
Yep.
Thank God. What a waste. All those hot days sitting on the beach.
It's a tough time though, isn't it? Like your teenage years, they're hard.
It's brutal, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
brutal.
I say that as a white male who played a lot of sport. Like that's, I can't imagine, for...
And you were so good looking. I've seen photos of you.
No. Just realised you were taking the piss there. Yeah. I was about to go, don't stop it, but don't really take the piss.
No, you and I have, we've grown into our looks, Hugh.
Yeah, well, let's say that. That's pretty good. I haven't yet, but thank you anyway.
Oh, yes,
That's very
you
nice
have.
of you.
Yes, you have. Late bloomers, I like to say. Yeah. But it's character building. I mean, don't you think if everything comes easily to you?
Totally.
I mean, how many good-looking, boring people do you know?
Okay.
Whereas I reckon, you develop a wit, or you develop empathy, or you develop these other things because you can't rely on your looks.
Yeah.
And it's funny going back to the school reunions and seeing what happened to the really, really glamorous girls, isn't it?
Yeah, we just had our 20-year reunion just last year, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm not going to say any more than that, but I know, yes, I know what you're saying.
Well, I got voted most improved.
Did you?
Which I think was a compliment. Backhanded maybe, but I took it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was dog ugly.
So,
my mum used to even say, yes, Georgie's our plain one.
but really?
I had a very handsome younger brother. That didn't help.
Right. I know how that feels. I'm wondering also the influence of your parents' separation on you as a young person. Has that kind of helped shape who you are in any way, or the kind of parent you are, or?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely shaped me because it gave me great resolve that if there were times when I felt parenting and guidance were lacking, I had to dig deep and work it out for myself. Mm. It's not that I ever felt that I wasn't loved, but there were definitely times where I felt absolutely misunderstood.
Yeah, because I certainly look at that and think at the age of 5, parents going a separate way, that's a really, really difficult thing to... I mean, it happens to a lot of people. It's a very common thing.
Well, I remember my year 1 teacher saying to me, I've never forgotten this, she said to me, Georgie Gardner, you walk around like you've got the world on your shoulders. And at the age of 5 or 5.5, I would have been, I remember thinking, I don't quite understand what she means, but whatever she has just said absolutely resonates. Hmm. And it kind of makes me a bit sad that at such a young age I was feeling it so heavily. But it is what it is. Mm. And as you know so well, there are people going around with far bigger things to contend with. And it clearly gave me resilience
Yeah.
and empathy and understanding. And I remember there were, back at that time, so that was about 1975, 76, it was quite rare to have divorced parents.
Right.
And you know what it's like as a kid, you just want to fit in, you don't want to be different.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling that acutely. But then as, you know, years rolled on, more and more kids were coming to school going, oh, my mum and dad are... So, and I remember thinking, oh, well, this is where I can help. I've done this. I can help you with this. So it was a great opportunity, I guess, to use that experience and...
To help others. What has it helped you down the track as far as... Have you experienced other hardships that have popped up along the way where kind of that sense that as a 5-year-old you got through your parents' separation, you'll get through this as well?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what I go back to, even if it's subconscious, because I got through. As soon as I left school, I took off and went and lived in Italy for a couple of years, and that was a huge step to take, but an absolute turning point, because I arrived in Italy not speaking a word of Italian, not knowing anyone, age 17, and was sort of thrown into this family where I worked as a nanny, 2 little kids who didn't speak a word of English, so you can imagine how that worked.
Yeah.
And I was unbelievably lonely and homesick. And, of course, I know it's hard to fathom these days, but this was before a mobile phone, no mobile phone. I mean, I used to write letters. It used to take 2 weeks to get back, and my mum used to send sort of packages with bits and pieces in, but it would take 2 weeks if it got there at all, because the Italian postal system is so hopeless. But I used to, at any opportunity, if I had a day off or I had some spare time, I'd jump on a train and just go somewhere. I didn't really care where, but I just used to sort of look at a timetable at the train station and decipher how much I needed to get a ticket and jump on and just go for it. And I'd sit there watching and spending time on my own and thinking and listening to people and watching them gesticulate and communicate. I couldn't understand half of what they were saying, but it was just this opportunity to observe and listen and really think about who I was and what I wanted to get out of life. And, oh, my God, when I think back to that, I mean, to go into the world of journalism, what an extraordinary, unbelievable opportunity.
Yeah.
Which sadly these days you can't get because we've all got a phone. So all I had was a Walkman. Now, you don't remember a Walkman.
Hey, excuse me. I got given a Walkman my grade 2 birthday, and Mum and Dad gave me the Paul Simon tape.
There you go. They had very good taste, your parents.
Yeah, and I remember thinking I could be the coolest kid in school right now.
Yeah, well, you would have been.
I called it a man walker as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, for show and tell. I said I got a man walker for having no idea what it was. But
How unreal.
So I do know that. I do know that feeling, and I agree with you. I think it is. We're not very good at being alone anymore, or we're never alone anymore.
No.
I did a similar thing to you in 2000. I went to England to play cricket for 7 months, and it was. I mean, the internet was around, but I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I think someone had tried to explain how email works just before I went, and I just didn't quite get it. I didn't have a mobile, I don't think. But if I did, it only had text message, phone calls and Snake on it, so it wasn't addictive. And I was by myself. Well, I wasn't by myself. I was with a cricket club, but I had that much time to myself. And at the time, I used to get quite bored and feel lonely. I'd feel the exact same thing. But I look back on it, and you just do so much thinking, so much creative thinking. When you're by yourself, which
Absolutely.
I think, is this something you'll encourage your kids to do?
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is, though, it's virtually impossible to do now.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean,
Well,
I try really hard. But, you know, even if we go on a car trip, I say, right, devices down, put them in the glove box, look out the window and just use your imagination.
Yeah.
Because how many times do you remember as a kid just staring out the window and
Yeah.
thinking and fantasising?
Yep.
They don't get a chance to do that.
Yeah.
And we're letting them down big time, because that is the opportunity to, at the very least, just space out, but at the very most, create and imagine and develop and, invent.
So is this one of the battles that you're having on the home front right now, devices?
Oh, we all are, but we're having it with ourselves as well. I mean, I don't know the last time I had serious downtime. I mean, I try and walk the dog every afternoon and not take my phone. Well, there's 40 minutes, but, it's this world we now are enveloped in. And I just feel incredibly grateful that I had those 2 years in Italy where, I could barely converse with another person unless they spoke English.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of time there where you're in your own head and you're having some pretty profound kind of conversations with yourself. I'm sounding like a complete loop.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
It was a big turning point for me.
So I'm very interested for all of us out there. We all have tough days, regardless of what we do with work. I know if I've had a tough day, I find myself thinking, I need to just go for a run. I just have to put my runners on and run, and to get my way through this, to think my way through it. What are the things that you have found help you? If you've had a really shitty day and you're thinking, well, I got to get up at 3:30 tomorrow morning and do the same thing again. Do you have things that you consciously do to get you back on track, or are there things that you just do naturally that seem to help you get back into a headspace where you can go again the next day?
Something that's been an enormous sort of panacea, if you like, for that is getting a dog. We got a dog a few years ago, and I try and make a habit of most afternoons, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter how inclement the weather. I put his lead on, I put my sneakers on, I leave my phone behind and walk, and I go and find a lovely, ideally isolated bush track or somewhere that's just being back in nature, and that absolutely helps just melt away anything that's really stressed me out that day. It gives me time to just reflect and put things into perspective, because I often find something can feel really insurmountable or disastrous, and then with the passage of time and just being, disconnected from screens, devices, being in nature and just giving things time to settle, it's never nearly as big a deal as you thought it was.
Yeah.
And I often come back just with a much clearer head. And it also provides me somehow, I think, with an opportunity to just be a little bit more gentle on myself and almost give myself a little bit of a hug and say, do you know what? You did your best. You might not be happy with how that's been perceived, or you might feel you failed at that, or that didn't go according to plan. But don't be too hard on yourself, because you did your best.
Yeah.
So that's been a great, particularly since I took up this hosting role, I found that to be a really critical part of my day. But I also find that, I just love talking to people. I talk to strangers all the time, much to my kids' embarrassment. I talk to everyone, and people are, I reckon, for the most part, lovely and generous and self-deprecating. And there's nothing like speaking to a stranger when you've had a really crappy day and you can have a laugh about something really silly, and you realise that we're all dealing with our own crap in different ways and through different means. But at the end of the day, we're all in it together, and you can think things are going pretty badly, and then you strike up a conversation with someone who's contending with something far more serious or far worse, and boy, that gives you perspective and it makes you reflect.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to talk more about, I suppose, the some of the hardships that you've had to endure throughout your life. My
dad died very unexpectedly at the age of 52, an age that I'm approaching, which is quite
So how old are you
sobering.
at that time?
I was 25.
Okay.
And I felt that very keenly because I sort of felt I'd lost my dad as a child through the divorce, and I was just getting to know him again in my early 20s and reconnecting. And for him then to die unexpectedly was just an awful shock, and there was just a deep sense of absolute sadness. He's never met Tim, my husband. He's obviously never met my kids, never saw me on TV. And I took quite a while to well, you never sort of get over it, but I took quite a while to adjust to that, not having him.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he was in Perth and I was in Sydney. For years, when I'd go back to Perth, I would just expect to see him, because when I went back to Perth, he was always there. And yeah, I felt that very keenly. But I also kind of understood that grief, we don't do grief very well in this country. There's a reason why in some countries, women walk around in black for a whole year, because it's part of the grieving process, and it's so the community around her can factor that in. Whereas we live in this world now where it's just like, oh, well, yep, onwards and upwards, moving on. And grief can rear its head, years down the track in the most unexpected ways and in unexpected times. You can't schedule it in. And, I think I was gentle on myself enough to let myself go through that process and learn from it. But that was hard, and I felt very isolated being in Sydney without family around me, and not being in a city where people knew my dad. I struggled with that.
How would he be now watching you sort of every morning? Would he be the kind of dad who'd be watching you every morning and then calling you to chat about it afterwards, or? Yeah,
possibly.
Would have it made him, immensely proud?
Oh, he would have been. Yeah, he would be. He would have been. He probably wouldn't necessarily articulate it.
Wouldn't say it. You could tell he would be. Yeah,
but he would be. He'd be chuffed. Absolutely, he would. And he was an early riser, so he'd be up. But yeah, I think he would be. And I definitely owe some of my success to him, because he instilled in me a very strong work ethic, an enormous sense of having a social conscience. I used to watch him do volunteer work. He was a very prominent and proud Rotarian in Perth, and I've got really fond memories of him picking us up on a Sunday morning, and he'd say, right, we're off and we'd drive out to outer suburbs, and he'd be painting the fences of, a single mother who was in financial
hardship, and
yeah, and he did a lot of volunteer work, and that has absolutely stayed with me in terms of never ever losing sight of how privileged we are and how it is incumbent upon us to give back.
I'm interested that whole thing about not getting to see your kids, when him not getting to meet your kids, when it was a few years ago now, I was playing cricket and I looked across to the boundary and my dad had come to watch, and I remember thinking, I don't know if Dad will listen to this podcast, probably not, but I remember seeing Dad and thinking, gosh, Dad looks old for the first time. I've never thought that before, but he was walking a lot slower and a lot greyer. And I remember thinking, I don't have any kids. I've got to have kids. I want Dad to meet my kids. I just suddenly had this, I don't know. And I went home that night and said to Penny, I said,
Penny.
I know you want to go to New York.
Feel like a candlelit dinner?
Wasn't far off
Penny,
that.
oysters. Champagne. Oh, Penny. How beautiful you look. Penny, need any housework doing?
It wasn't far off that, Georgie. I remember saying...
Yeah, get cracking.
Yeah, because Penny we were going to live in New York for a few years and Penny wanted to work in New York and I said, I think we need to have kids. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, I just want Dad to be there for... And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, I just think he looks a bit older. And so we had a pretty big change of life plans and it was all because of I really wanted Dad to be around. I mean, he's still very fit and healthy now, so I probably
don't kill him off too soon.
I didn't need to panic too much, but
but I know what you mean because that is an absolute sadness that because I'm so proud of my kids.
Yeah.
But you know he lives on through them, and
what kind of a granddad or grandpa would have he been?
probably like me, impatient,
Okay.
a bit grumpy, but good fun. And generous,
Yeah.
and he was a quiet achiever, really.
Yeah.
Never really one to blow his own trumpet.
Do you see any of his qualities in your kids?
Yeah, I do actually. I do.
That
And
must be nice.
funnily enough, I see some of those qualities in Tim, my husband.
Really?
Yeah, and they say you do often choose a partner
Yes.
who reflects. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's really nice.
Can you tell me about Tim quickly? We don't know much about Tim. I met
Tim.
him at the tennis
Tim.
last year and had a wonderful... We had a couple of beers over about 10 minutes and it was terrific, but I'd love to know more about Tim.
Yeah, he's very good value. He puts up with me. He's just a really understated, fiercely intelligent, caring, kind individual. I'm very, very lucky to have him.
How did you meet?
We met through a mutual friend.
Yep.
Yeah, at a 30th birthday in Sydney. We're both from Perth, but we met in Sydney through the Perth Mafia. And I knew straight away that there was something special about him. We were both quite inebriated, I might add. So that was probably helpful because
Yeah.
I don't know, he's quite shy, which I'm really attracted to shy men.
Yep.
And does that sound creepy? I don't know.
No, not at all.
I love shy people generally. I think there's
Yep.
often something so beautiful
Yep.
about someone who holds back.
Yep.
Anyway, so I could tell straight away there was something, and thankfully he thought the same thing. So we were engaged within 5 months.
Really? My gosh.
And as I said to him, I said, listen, it was getting a bit dusty up there on the shelf, so I'm glad you've picked me up. And
How old are you at the time?
32.
32, okay.
I thought I was getting a bit long in the tooth.
Okay.
So that was lucky.
But it must be very important to have someone with what you do for work. It must be very important to have a really good support crew. And I don't say that in a way that's his full-time job. It's not, but it must be important for you to have that.
Oh, for sure. But also someone who is just totally unaffected and you're right, Hugh. He has been enormously supportive and I think it takes actually a very secure and strong man who can not just sort of put up with a partner who has a profile, but also be very happy for me.
Yeah. And take great joy in your success.
Yeah,
Full stop.
absolutely. He's really selfless. In fact, too selfless. I'm often saying to him, you need to go and do something for you. Because I'm conscious that, I have a big job and with it comes some not so great adjuncts that if you're not familiar with, it can be a bit daunting. Do you know what I mean? Like the attention and... but he's great. He takes it in his stride and we just laugh. I mean, we might go somewhere and he'll give me a nudge and he'll say to me, oh, quite a few hungry eyes here. And by that he means people who go, their eyes look hungry because they open. It's not very good for a podcast, but do you know what I mean? Their eyes
Georgie's making her eyes go
big.
big, yeah.
And we have a giggle and because I don't notice it. but he'll just guide me gently and say, we might want to go and sit over here, or we
Might
might
be
want
better to sit here.
Yeah, well, so it's a good counterbalance.
Yeah.
And
We've got a helicopter taking off in the
we
background
do.
right now,
We
which
do.
is
Well, I'm
good.
gibbering anyway, so
No, that's all right.
yeah.
I think that helicopter might be our wind up. So, Georgie, I know that you
All aboard.
I know. Is that your helicopter leaving?
Yes.
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, Hugh, we are off now to Gilligan's Island.
Oh, okay. All aboard. Georgie, thanks for being so generous with your time. You've been here at Channel 9 since, 4 o'clock this morning, so to hang around for us.
I may as well sleep over.
Oh, I think
Ready for tomorrow.
It's quite comfy in this room, I reckon. I know your kids are on school holidays at the moment, so you've got them waiting for you at home. So it's particularly generous of you to give up your time to come and chat to us today. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your school holidays.
Oh, thank you, Hugh. It's a privilege and a great pleasure to talk to you as always. So thank you.
Thanks, Georgie. Thank you.
Can I be a fascination moment? 'Cause you hold the feeling in the room. But you want the bed, I need the dream. Hoping the pieces, they just falling. Staring at your door, I felt that coldness. Like I'm a ghost inside your room. And I never go back.
Well, what a lovely woman she is.
What a great way to describe her.
Yeah, she just seems. I've met her once actually. I met her with you
When we were at the tennis.
when we were at the tennis.
Yeah.
And she seems, and she's just as lovely as she was then.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. And her husband's lovely as well.
Oh, we
He
met
was
him.
there, yeah.
Yeah, at the tennis.
At the tennis.
That's right. Well, Hugh, great. That's just fascinating, isn't it? To get that insight into someone like that who has such a public life, to get that insight into what her life's, often really like, and then you just sort of remember it's like, oh, she's just a person. Well, I mean, a couple of things I wanted to just ask you about, and one of she talks a lot about being a parent, like a lot about her kids. I don't have children, but so much about what we talk about on this podcast is just how to look after yourself, I guess, and it is a hard thing, and maybe one of the hardest things is to look after yourself. But when you've then got also a kid or kids, and you've got a kid, soon to be kids, I just wanted to just ask you, as a parent and as someone who knows better than me, how do you look after yourself, but then also balance that with looking after someone else who can't really help themselves at all? Like, at what point do you go, okay, well, I have to just put my personal health on hold for a second because this person needs me more?
So people with multiple kids will laugh at what I'm about to say because I've only got one, but parenting is really hard.
Yeah.
It is just so hard. And I know one day I'll look back on this and listen to this one day and go, you had no idea you had one. We're about to have two. But
Because when I think hard, I think like, when you're snookered, that's hard. It's like, what angle do you hit it off the wall of the pool table? And then when you get it, what a feeling. But when you say hard, I get it.
well, I guess it's like you're snookered all day then. I don't know if like you're just constantly snookered and then you get unsnookered just before you go to bed, then you get snookered again first thing in the morning. Like it's just...
I mean, in all seriousness, I cannot even imagine. All my friends have kids.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's the greatest thing that's happened to me. It's like I'm so in love with Benji. I can't even put it into words. It's the greatest feeling. But I was really interested in the way Georgie talked about parenting. I suppose what I think she does really well, and for the listeners who are familiar with Brené Brown's work, this will ring a bell with them because
Brené Brown is unbelievable.
she is. Yeah. She talks about how I think what Georgie does really well, which a lot of us struggle with, me included, and I think a lot of parents will relate to this, but we find it hard to, the emotion we struggle with most, and this is according to Brené Brown, by the way, is joy. She says we just are so uncomfortable with joy. Now, when I first heard her say that, I was thinking, that's ridiculous. I love joy. That's my favourite emotion, surely. And then she gave this example, and it was a parenting example, and it really rung true for me. She said, how many parents, this is Brené Brown saying this, she said, as a parent, how many of you look over your kids sleeping and think to yourself, I couldn't love you more. I could not love you more. I'm so in love with you. And then all of a sudden this other thought comes over you, which is, oh my gosh, what if something happens to you tomorrow? What if you get hit by a car? What if you get sick? How will I ever cope with that? And you start having the worst possible thoughts come through your head.
You start playing out worst case scenario.
Yeah. And when she said that, I thought, I do that all the time. I'm constantly doing that. Like I have.
Well, I mean, I don't have kids, but I do that all the time with everything. Like
Yeah.
you just sort of think, well, that's good. I won this thing, or the TV show we just made like rated really well, but what if the ratings go down, or what if we get axed, or what if I can't get a job after this?
Yeah, or you're in a good relationship and you're thinking, how good's this? But you start thinking,
Yeah.
what if they don't love me the same way? Or well, what if they get sick, or whatever it is? So
What if they meet someone else?
Yeah, so it's relevant to all of us. But Brené Brown says the reason is we are so uncomfortable experiencing an emotion of joy because we are not good at being vulnerable. As human beings, we hate being vulnerable. And that's what happens when you stop and realize what you have and how much you love that person, the fact that they could be gone. You are vulnerable. To love someone and to love something is to make yourself vulnerable, and we don't like that. So we have all these thoughts going through our head of what if this happens. And Brené Brown says, I can't remember where I heard I said this, where she said this, but she said, in the research I've done, she said, I've asked people who have lost someone, and I've said to them, when that person was around, when they're alive, did you say to yourself, what happens if something happens to this person? And these people said, yeah, we did. And she said, well, it's a hard question to ask you, but did it help? Are you better off now because you had that, because you had those dreadful thoughts? And they all said no. And then they went on to say, we just wish we'd lent into joy a little bit more when we had the opportunity.
Wow, yeah, lent into joy. That's good.
And that's what Georgie Gardner does. I find, especially when she talks about her kids, she leans into joy. She doesn't let these thoughts of what if this happens. She appreciates what she's got right in front of her, which is two healthy kids.
That's gratitude, really, isn't it?
It is, and this is when I remember listening to Brené Brown say this, and I can't remember if it was one of her YouTube talks, if it was in one of her books I was reading. I can't remember, but I was thinking, oh my gosh, how do we lean into joy more? I can't wait to hear this. This changes my talks completely. I'm going to talk about this. This is what I want to talk about. This is amazing. And then she said this. She said, how do we lean into joy more? And she paused, and it was a very dramatic pause, and she said, we practice gratitude. And I nearly fell off my chair because I was like, well, that's what I've done for the last 6 years to tell people how to do that. So that's very exciting for me. And we spoke about this on the previous episode, so let's not go into it too far. But if you stop and actually record the things that are going well in your life, she said, in a more practical sense, if you are looking over your child sleeping thinking, what if something happens to him tomorrow? You don't say that. You just say, what am I grateful for right now about my child? Mm-hmm. I love the way they sound when they're sleeping. I love how cute they look in their pajamas. I love their hair. I love the way they look at me when they first wake up. There are people out there saying, I'm not a parent, this is not relevant to me. If it's with your partner and you have these dreadful thoughts come in, what if they fall in love with someone else? No. What are you grateful for about them? I'm grateful for the way they message me all the time. I'm grateful for the way that, and you just start, instead of having negative thoughts, replace them with things that you are grateful for about that person, that situation, that opportunity, whatever it is. It can be opportunity as well. Things pop up in life and we're given opportunities to go and, for me, it might be go and present somewhere. For you, it might be to write a script for something. But we have these thoughts of, what if people don't like my work? Or what if people don't? Yeah. What if people don't like my talk? We have to replace those thoughts with, well, do you know what? I'm actually grateful for this opportunity because 5 years ago I would have killed to be in this position. Or, we just got to replace our vulnerable thought, our negative thoughts that come from a place of not wanting to be vulnerable with thoughts around gratitude. And I think that's what Georgie, I don't know how she learned to do this. I don't know where she picked it up, but I think it's what she does naturally.
Well, you talk in your talks at the Resilience Project, you talk about negativity bias. And that's kind of what that is, isn't it? That we're more likely to...
Yeah, so we're 7 times more likely to notice a negative than a positive. Yeah. A lot of research done around that. And in fact, a lot of the research has been looking at relationships to say, in a relationship, I think it's like in a relationship we're 5 times more likely to notice something negative that happens in our relationship than something positive that happens.
And then we probably just conflate that even more in our heads, because someone once told me as well that when people are in a depressed state, they let their inner thoughts get the better of them. But when we're in that mode, trying to remember to practice gratitude
is the key. Yeah, it's absolutely the key. Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard to do, but if you can somehow sort of like check yourself and go like, okay, I'm thinking negatively, I'm focusing on the negative. What do I have and what are the good things here?
Because sometimes I think it's harder for people when you think I'm being negative, it's hard to say, come on, just be positive, because it's not a very practical thing to start doing. But if you were to just replace that with just start being positive with, what am I grateful for about this situation right now? That's a more practical and easier answer to get to in order to replace the negative thoughts. And that's Brené Brown's, that's obviously what Brené Brown talks about a lot.
I mean, if no one's heard of Brené Brown before, it really is worth a Google.
Absolutely,
put aside a few hours, watch some TED Talks.
Netflix has got a special that's just come out.
She did it. That's right. She did a special. Yeah. She's great. I mean, she's a researcher, and most of her stuff is on vulnerability. And what I found so fascinating is shame, and the stuff she talks about with shame. I mean, it's aside. That's another topic altogether. But anyway, bit of homework.
Well, her latest book's got the word imperfect in it as well, which is
right.
Which I don't know if we helped inspire that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably not
possible.
Worth suing her. I mean, I feel like suing her would. I mean, you'd get some publicity. That's for sure. The Imperfects Sue Brown.
Well, when I think about it, I think potentially her book came out before this podcast. But that's
we don't talk about that. That's no big deal. I mean, what is a timeline anyway? Everything's sort of happening at the same time anyway. Anyway, I've never heard of Brené Brown, to be honest. I had not, for the record, no idea who she was until you just mentioned her, so there's no way we could have copied that. Cool. But at the Resilience Project, you do talk about gratitude's a big thing that you talk about a lot. Empathy, as we've spoken about on the podcast before. The one thing we haven't spoken about, or you haven't spoken about yet on this podcast, is the third pillar of the resilience pyramid, which is mindfulness. GEM, gratitude, empathy, mindfulness.
You're very much on point with your branding. Thank you.
Hey, no big deal. But mindfulness, it made me think of. I thought of mindfulness when Georgie was talking about walking her dog.
Yeah.
It seemed like. I mean, am I right in saying that her wanting to take her dog for a walk every afternoon to sort of try and calm herself down or relax? She talks about getting into nature with her dog. I mean, that's essentially, it's not meditating, but it's kind of mindfulness, isn't it?
Well, it's actually, funnily enough, it's actually how I try to do mindfulness practice at the moment, is to walk our dog around the block. And all I do when I walk the dog around the block is think about what I can hear. And so I don't take my phone. Just like Georgie said, doesn't take her phone. And I walk, it takes about 10 minutes and I'll be good for maybe a minute. And it's about a minute, and then my brain starts to say, what school are you at today? Where are you presenting today? Do we have time to get a coffee beforehand? Where should we get coffee? And then I say, no, what can you hear right now? And then I say, no, I can hear the trees. I can hear cars going past. I can hear the train. And then my brain says, and what are you going to do after you talk today? I wonder if we should go for lunch afterwards or whatever it is. And then I go, no, what can I hear? I can hear my feet on the footpath. Every single time you wrestle your thoughts back to what's happening right now, that's mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is the ability to be in the present moment, to be aware of what's happening as it's happening. And that's something I will say about Georgie. While she doesn't say it in this interview, she is very present. When you're with her, there's nothing else. She's not checking her phone. She's not distracted by other people. She is so. I think that's why she's a good interviewer. But she is so in the moment.
But yeah, I mean, so you can tell, and there's people that I think we all know people like that who, when you're with them, you feel like nothing else matters.
Yep.
You feel like you're so important to that person, and no matter how important or busy they are, you feel like all of their attention is on you. But with mindfulness, like with that idea of walking through the park and just listening to and being in the now, I feel like I've been told to do that forever. Like I've always been told, live in the now, appreciate the moment. The present is a gift. All these sorts of things that I've heard. But why? Like why? How does it help? Like what difference does it make?
Well, the way I'd explain it, really, I suppose mindfulness to me is, I think it's the ability to be present so that you can be calm. So are we calm in Australia right now? No, we're not. The most common mental illness in Australia right now is anxiety disorder. Overwhelming amount of obsessive, negative, worrying, irrational thoughts you can't switch off.
Yeah.
Are we calm in Australia? No, we're not. The next time you're in traffic and you slow down a little bit just because you're trying to work out where you turn and you happen to inconvenience the person behind you by, I don't know, 3 seconds.
Yep.
So the net result for that person is they'll arrive at their destination literally 3 seconds later. You watch how disproportionate their response is to the inconvenience caused to their lives. We're not bad people. We're just so highly strung at the moment.
Yep.
So we're not overly calm. And I think the way we kind of treat each other and how angry we get so quickly in so many scenarios is an indication of the fact that we're just not calm, we're not present at the moment. So to answer your question, I think the reason it's important is we're just so much happier when we're thinking about what's happening as it's happening. We're not present. The research, and I don't want to get this, well, I'm going to get this wrong, but the research says that I think we spend 49% of our day thinking about the future, and I think it's around 30%.
Is this in Johan Hari's? I think this is in Lost. This is the third mention of that book.
He's getting a good plug here.
Lost Connections.
I've got a book as well coming out, so just,
So I've heard from you.
So multiple times. And I think we spend 30% of our day thinking about the past.
Yep.
That gives us somewhere around 15 to 20% of the day where we're actually thinking about what's happening as it's happening.
Yep. And I've heard people say that we should be thinking about what's happening right now all of the time, because what's happening right now is our entire life.
Yeah, correct.
Like that, our entire life is what's happening right now. What happened 5 minutes ago is gone, and what's happening tomorrow is complete fiction.
Well, this is a deeply philosophical thing to say, but we spend all this time thinking about the future, but it never arrives.
Yeah.
Because when it does, it's the present moment.
Yep.
And actually, you said this to me once. You said, that's very sad because 100% of our time is the present moment.
Yeah.
Do you remember saying that to me?
Yeah, but I know that I haven't come up with that myself. I know I've heard someone else say that for sure.
I was very impressed anyway.
I think that's probably an Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, potentially.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But it's very true. So when you practice mindfulness, you teach yourself to be in the present moment. And I think it's the biggest upside we have as a species right now is just to be better at being wherever we are. Wherever you are, be there. And that's something that, to bring it back to Georgie, she says that she walks her dog. And there's also a strong bit of research around connection to nature and all that kind of stuff. But for Georgie, leaving her phone at home and just being there with her dog and being out in nature is something that helps her to feel present. There are so many ways to practice meditation. My gosh, you can go from the extreme end, which is what Penny, my wife, has done, which is called Vipassana meditation.
Oh, wow, the silent retreat.
Yeah, and I really want to get her. I actually want to really interview her at some point in this podcast because her journey through mental health is fascinating, and it will help so many people. So if we can get her in at some, I would love her to do this, but could be a bit of a weird one interviewing my wife, but I think it would help a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But she's done Vipassana meditation, which is 10-day silent retreats. You do not talk for 10 days. You do around 8 hours of meditation every day.
Yeah.
And you learn to accept the discomfort and the pain as you kind of, rather than feeling it, you just observe it. And she says it's the greatest thing she's ever done for her mental health. And then you go down the other end of the spectrum, which is probably me, which is me walking the dog and paying attention to what I can hear. And I don't get up on stage and say, be more like me. That's not. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, and mindfulness is something I've got to get better at. I know that, but
you'll have to get some pretty short shorts to be like you. So it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Over the past hour, they've really ridden up quite high as well.
I haven't noticed. My eyes are up there. On meditation, I feel like a lot of people, myself included for a long time, the word meditation, we always just think of like a yogi sitting there cross-legged, and it puts us off because like, oh, I'm not that person.
Yeah, I'm not doing that, yeah.
But hearing you say that meditation can be walking your dog, like what else is there? What else can we do?
There are a lot of apps out there that Josh, I know you don't have a microphone in front of you, but you swear by an app, the Sam Harris app, is that right? What's it called?
Waking Up.
The Waking Up app. And it's a course. I think it's a course that he's spent a lot of time as a neuroscientist. So many options out there.
Mindfulness or being present doesn't have to be something that you necessarily do intentionally. Like often it can just happen accidentally. Like if you're doing something that completely puts you in the moment, whether it be playing sport or like for me, I realized I kind of had this sort of bit of a sort of like, as Oprah would say, an aha moment when I realized that, the things, when I'm really enjoying myself, the times where I'm like, I just had such a good time. That was great. Like whether it was like a really good conversation with someone or I was acting in a show or playing sport in a team or whatever it is. And you know it when you do it and you have those moments where you're like, I really liked that. I kind of realized that in all of those times, I'm enjoying it so much because I'm able to not think about other things.
So you're talking about flow.
Flow.
The state of flow.
Flow, yeah.
If people want to read about flow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
You've just gone into another language then. That does happen with Hugh every now and again. He'll just drop into a different language. But just wait for him to just return to English.
Don't ask me how to spell his name.
Okay.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Wow.
I mean, people couldn't Google that from what I've just said, I don't think. But if you look up flow and maybe Josh is doing some Googling as we struggle through this, but he's done all the research on flow. What you're talking about is an activity that you are naturally really good at and that you enjoy doing, that when you're so immersed in it, everything else, if someone stopped you during it and said, what are you thinking about right now? Your answer would be, I'm actually not thinking.
Yeah.
This is just happening.
It's so true. Like there's
flow.
Lots of things and it's activities, but sometimes it is also a conversation or you're watching a film or whatever. And all those things that allow you to just be in that moment. I just realized that, they're the times that I've felt the happiest.
Well, it's a lovely one because for me it was. If you look him up, you'll see he looks quite sunburnt most of the time.
Oh, that is not who I was expecting to see. We're going to have to put a link to this, Josh.
Mihalyi. I think that's pronounced Mihai. And then type flow. I'm not going to go near his surname. It's so many letters. My gosh.
With all due respect to Mihaly, is that how you say it? Mihaly.
I don't know.
This guy. I mean, I'm just looking at his surname. With all due respect, I mean, if you just passed out on your keyboard, there's a fairly good chance you'll get his surname right.
So flow is the activity where you're so immersed in it. It's something that other people find quite challenging. For you, that activity comes quite easily, and it is. He talks about it as a form of meditation. So they did lots of research with conductors, orchestra, and they'd stop them and say, "How long have you been doing this for?" And they'd say, "I don't know, 10 minutes, 15. I got no idea. It turned out it was an hour or whatever it is." We all have those activities. For me, for 25 years of my life, it was playing cricket, and then I stopped playing cricket a few years ago, and I noticed very quickly a huge difference in the way I felt about myself and life, and I realised I'd lost my thing for me that was flow.
Yeah.
And so I think, and the older we get, the more busy we get. We sacrifice things because we feel like they're selfish. So maybe for someone out there, it's gardening or it's painting, but we think, I don't have time to paint today. I've got to get the kids to soccer or whatever it is. I think we need to make time for those things that bring us that flow experience.
Well, Hugh, another great one. So thank you again. And thanks to Georgie Gardner for making the time
Absolutely.
for us.
And we look forward to next episode, which will feature Ryan Shelton.
Oh, is he the guy from the Monty and Whipper show? He was the guy.
I can't remember. I don't.
No one does. Yeah.
Fitzy and Whipper or something.
No,
anyway.
Fitzy and Whipper are on now.
Ah, right.
And then there was a Nova radio show called, I believe it was called Ryan, Monty and Whipper.
Well, it sounds great.
Yes, I think the guy...
Was it good?
It was okay. It had its moments. It was on at the same time as another show called Hamish and Andy, so I think some people might have missed it. But but that's cool. The hosts aren't holding on to that. They're not attached to that failure. They've forgotten about it and they've moved on. They definitely don't bring it up that much and they don't talk about it. But no, yes, next episode... In what will be a slightly different episode, I will be the guest.
Yeah, and I look forward to it immensely because it's the reason the podcast exists.
Yeah,
we had a conversation a while back when we were catching up, and you told me your story, and that's what gave birth to the idea of the podcast. So I look forward to interviewing you soon.
Yeah, I'm weirdly nervous about it.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I'm weirdly nervous about it, but I'm excited about it as well.
Very good. Well, I look forward to it, and thanks everyone for listening, and thanks for your feedback. It is it means the world that people are contacting us with such incredibly nice things. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on.
Hugh, it's Ryan. Oh, stuffed up. I'm really, really stuffed up. Oh, shit. I was on Gumtree today and someone was selling a brown Labrador for $25. And I thought, perfect, I'll get it and we'll practice some lines together for the new show I was telling you about. But this dog, it is not screen ready. It is not screen ready. I should have asked the owner. I'm an idiot. It's torn the place to shreds, Hugh. I'm locked in the bathroom. I need your help. Come quick. Oh, and I hope the interview with Georgie went well. What do you think of the pitch? I'd love to hear. Call me.
To call back, press 2-2. To replay message, press 1 to reply.
If this episode has triggered anything for you around mental health, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is brought to you by the Resilience Project. Produced by Ryan Shelton, Hugh and Josh van Cuylenburg. A very, very special thank you also to No Mono for generously allowing us to use Keep On as the theme song for this podcast.